Hello everyone, this tutorial it's about TDD, which stands for Test Driven Development. It is a very important topic, if you ask me, and somehow it can make a big difference in your daily ticket or task solving. Especially in what regards the quality of your work. The history of the TDD is around, I don't know, 70s, I guess, when there were only few developers compared to today numbers. And they were always doing TDD, meaning they were planning the work before doing the work itself, meaning the coding. Yeah. So what is TDD? Well, TDD appears because we have a task, we have something to do. Usually it's a ticket in Jira or GitHub or other project management platforms out there. And what is very important to remember and to understand that TDD, it's a methodology. It's not a tool. It's not like yes, I'm writing a Cypress test or a Jest test, and I'm doing TDD. No, TDD it is when you place it in the right flow. So normally, if you don't do TDD, you take a task, you read it, and then you jump into the Visual Studio or what IDE do you use. You write the code, you manually test it, and then if everything goes okay, you go to the code review. But of course, it's not going okay, so you go back to the coding, you go back to the testing, you go back to the coding, and so on, until at some moment you say, oh, okay, now it seems to work. But you cannot test everything at once. So there is a possibility, and it happens. I think you are guys aware of that. That some things are left behind, and we move the ticket to the code review, but the code reviewer comes to us and say like, well, I've tested this and this worked, but this one doesn't work, so please fix that too. Now, if you want to avoid this situation, which also somehow makes you not a senior level developer, because usually from a professional point of view, it is expected that a person who has experience and has a good sense of coding is gonna do like 9 out of 10 tickets, let's say, meeting the requirements. If it happens like every few tickets, one is sent back, obviously something you do wrong. So the TDD comes exactly in here. After you read, you write a series of test cases. Test cases 1, test case 2, test case 3, and so on. Yeah. And those test cases can be written in Notepad, in text edit file. I've seen someone in Excel, can be in Notion, can be in your IDE, being a JavaScript file or Python or whatever. It doesn't matter. You can write them directly as tests. But if you are a beginner, I strongly advise you to start with this. And you take the ticket, let's say we'll have like a login page to be done. Yeah, I have 2 form fields here, a button. And you go and say, okay, I'm gonna now write the test cases in plain English. And my advice is start with the bad parts. Always try to start with the bad parts. What can go wrong? Because those will come back to you from the client. If something goes okay, it works, it's not coming back to you, right? Maybe except as a reward. But normally, if something goes wrong, it's coming back to you. So it's great if you just imagine what can go wrong in these situations. Well, one thing that can go wrong is that server not to respond, yeah, or server to reply with 401 email or password exists, case in which you have to test validation. Error messages. Yeah. The password has to be minimum 8 characters, so you have to test the validation. Someone might click the button 10 times, so you gotta test this and create I think it's called the bounce function to make sure that even they click 10 times, you send the request only once. Yeah. And then you say, okay, then it should log in correctly, and it should what else should, yeah, I think this is the only case in a login form that is not opposite to bad, to say like that. Yeah. So this is how you do TDD. It's quite simple, but that's the important part. It's a methodology. So you have a ticket which contains a task. You read this one, and I strongly advise you to take the time required. Don't rush on this one, because it's very important in this first side, because there are two sides of accomplish a task. The first side, you have the ticket, you have the read and analyze. You have then TDD, meaning extract the test cases, and then run the test cases, and then you have the coding part. So there are two parts of fixing a task going into the production, usually into the master or main branch. Yeah. In this part, always the TDD is in this part, in the part 1. This is part 2. So again, you take the ticket, you read it, you analyze it, ideally not to have distraction around you. You extract the test cases, because this will guarantee you that you understand what you have to deliver, and most likely, sometimes you will realize that, oh, this part is missing, and you go back to the project manager or who filed the ticket and say, hey, this one is missing. What should I do about it? So you don't spend time in here 1 or 2 days and so on. You know upfront, yeah? Otherwise, you might be very good as a developer, but if you don't plan your work before using TDD or something similar, but I think TDD is the best choice, you might look like a medium developer or something like that, because the other will say about you, well, he's always taking tickets, but his tickets are returning to us after a few days, right? But they don't know that the fault was in the ticket. So this is where the root of the TDD and the necessity of it is basically in the ticket, because only few times the ticket is 100% written correctly. When you find a ticket like that, which says exactly what you have to do, even so, let's say you have this ticket. As a front-end developer, you have to always go into the browser and when you are about like 50-60% of the ticket, you have the feeling now it's done, now it's going to work, and you have this illusion for 10 or 20 times or so on, and you click and now is the last time, now it should work, and you spend a lot of time, probably hours, clicking and switching the context from the IDE to the browser. Why not just use a machine to run the browser? Yeah, use something like Cypress, which is a tool to write end-to-end tests, and you can just watch how he's doing this automatically, and then say it's going to tell you like this is okay, but this one is not, and you go and you fix only that part. It's magic. After you try a few times, you realize that this is magic. Now there are multiple types of tests, but the most important are unit testing, integration test, and end-to-end, which is basically integration test in a browser. Those are the most important from my point of view. I deeply recommend end-to-end for the front end and integration for AP endpoints. All right, please leave your comments down below. I'll be happy to respond to your comments.